Veronica doesn't know how to count with her fingers.
Veronica is very, very intelligent, but she never learned how to count with her fingers.
With my fingers. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Pod Sound School podcast. I'm your host, Veronica.
And I'm your least favorite host, Studio Steve.
You're my favorite.
Oh, thank you.
So on today's episode, we're going to go back to basics. We're going to take you from the beginning to the end of how to plan, produce, launch, and promote your podcast.
Yes, and we're going to try to do it in 11 simple steps, and we're going to make it very short and sweet for you. And this is for those of you who listened to our last episode. We convinced you to start a podcast. So
yes.
We know that you want to start a podcast, so now we're going to give you a checklist, so to speak. And if you can mark off these 11 points, you will come out of the gates swinging, and you will have a successful podcast.
Yes. Before we get started, I just want to invite everybody who's listening to this episode to join our Facebook group. I am in charge of the Facebook group because Steven is allergic to Facebook.
I am. I break out in hives.
He breaks into rashes.
Yeah, it's bad.
So, no matter how hard I try, he's just reluctant to dive into the Facebook sea.
Yes.
So I created a Facebook group because I want to have everybody in one place that we can just pop in daily and answer questions. We go live every Thursday and we do pod audits. And this is a good opportunity for you if you have a podcast to get some free coaching. The Facebook group, it's called Podcasting for Buses. You just have to type Podcasting for Buses on your Facebook search bar.
Yes.
Or we're going to drop the link on the description for this episode. You just have to click on the link and
come join the Facebook group.
Join the Facebook group.
All right, let's get to it.
How to start a podcast in 11 simple steps.
So number one, the very, very first step you need to take is to plan your show and do some research. Simple. So you want to pick a topic. How to find a good topic for your podcast. I have a YouTube video that I'm very proud of. It's very comprehensive.
It's got a lot of good info in it.
Take you to all the steps we take with our clients to find the perfect topic for you. So if you don't have a topic yet, then just take the time to watch this video and walk through the steps. But things that you need to have in mind is that you need to choose something that you feel very passionate and enthusiastic about. Yes. You want to choose a topic that you know very well and that you have expertise on and that you have the skills and that you have the knowledge.
Yes, or at least that it's like one of your favorite things.
One of your favorite things
that you want to become an expert in.
With that being said, there's depending on the format of your podcast, because you can be interviewing people who have the knowledge that you don't have. Then that can be another avenue too. You don't have to be an expert. You can be, I call this person the curator. So you are somebody who feels very passionate about certain topics, but you don't have the expertise or the credentials, and you want to have a podcast really, really bad about this topic. Then you interview people who are well known in the field and who can help you grow your podcast and help you grow your knowledge. I mean, it goes hand in hand. You will grow your knowledge and you will grow your show at the same time. This is like my very favorite one.
And then research who your audience will be.
Yes.
A lot of audience research.
Your niche audience. We are constantly saying on the podcast how important it is to find your people and cater the content specifically to your people.
We like to call it the ideal listener.
The ideal listener.
Yeah, so a good thing is to imagine an ideal listener, even think about it as one person. Who do you imagine is going to be your biggest fan? Is it a male, a female? What do they like to do? What are their interests? What are they struggling with? All of that.
You can
really
introduce some surveys if you think that it's necessary.
And if you already have a social following on your personal account and you do have a network of people on social media, that's a perfect opportunity to reach out and do a survey.
Yeah, you can summon your friends, your family members, your colleagues.
Surveying 5 people is way more effective than not talking to anybody about it.
You may be surprised and don't think that you know everything. Just don't get into that mentality. Just ask. Ask, and you will discover great things from your audience.
Show planning and research we've covered so far. Pick a topic, research who your audience will be, and then you want to pick a title. And with this, it's important to secure your domain name. You can get a domain name for $1 from GoDaddy for just $1 for the first year.
And then do some competitor analysis.
Yes. You know, if you're going to do a podcast about golf or about fishing, one thing you can do, Google has now totally re-optimized their search engine for podcasts. You can just search podcasts about fishing or podcasts about golfing, and all the podcasts that are popular on that topic will pop up. Listen through their podcast, see how they do it. What do you like about their show? What do you think they're leaving out? What do you think you can improve on? And don't be too intimidated if they sound way professional. Don't worry, you'll get there. Okay, let's move on to number 2. Create artwork. Obviously, the first thing you're going to need is your show cover art. You're going to need this to submit to the directories, and it's a square format, and you'll want it to be at 3,000 by 3,000 pixels. You can use Canva, the free version of Canva, to do this, and you'll hear us talk about that all the time. You could also use Photoshop or any of the fun photo editing apps that you can get. There's a lot of free options available. This is something you want to take very seriously, though, and create very good, attractive artwork. You want to stand out. This is one of the first things people are going to see to consider whether or not they should listen to your podcast. So this is...
Make it sexy.
Yeah, make it sexy, and you can look into having other people design it for you. There's a lot of very affordable artists on FIVERR.com that will specifically design podcast cover art. And if you like them, you can continue working with them. They'll help you with episodic artwork and different social media artwork pieces that are all branded inside their designs. And with that, also, you want to think about branding.
You want to think about branding and maybe get a photographer and get your picture taken professionally for your brand photos. You can also start thinking about colors and fonts that you'll gravitate around. And those are going to be the colors and fonts and images that will represent your brand. Because like we've said it so many times here, you have to think of yourself as a brand.
Yes, you do. Think of yourself as a
and
business.
Your podcast.
Think of your podcast as a brand. And then while you're at it, don't just stop with your podcast cover art. Get some other pieces of artwork that you can use for social media, letterheads, emails, all that fun stuff. Okay, let's move on to number 3. Social media setup.
Media. So our advice here would be just to pick 1 or 2 platforms to create profiles on. And we're just talking about if it's just you and your co-host and you have a 9 to 5 and this is just a side gig and you're not going in full steam, for lack of a better word.
But I like that. Full steam ahead.
Full steam ahead.
Yeah.
So choose only 2 social media platforms. Creating content for social media is super time consuming. What we have said many times here is that we don't want you to be on social media for the sake of being on social media. We want you to be on social media with a strategy and with a purpose.
Yeah, and so the way to do that is to understand how the social platforms work and play by the rules of the platforms. Twitter and Instagram are our favorites, and that's the ones we would most recommend. If you're just going to start with one, I would say Twitter. Kind of also depends on the topic of your show, I think, which platform is going to perform better for you. And also your personality. Do you like taking pictures of yourself, or are you a little camera shy? Maybe start on Twitter.
Do you have a face for radio?
And then we also have a very helpful playlist on YouTube all about social media, specifically Twitter and Instagram. It will teach you about writing copy, hashtag strategy, automation that you can use to save time, strategies for quick growth. Before we move on from setting up your social media, we recommend that you do that at least 4 weeks before your launch. You want to get on there. You want to begin posting, engaging with followers, and following people.
Yeah, that should be part of your launch strategy,
And
is to grow your social media before you start putting episodes out.
yes, and that will bring us to number 4.
Number 4, email marketing and website.
Email marketing and website.
So first, with your website, you want to determine if it's in your budget right now to have a website. We really like Squarespace and Wix. Both of those will be about $140, $150 a year, which is about $12 or $13 a month. And if that's not in your budget, it's okay. You don't need a website to begin with, because as we'll talk about as we get to number 8, you can start with just a podcast hosting site. And then you can use something called Linktree. Linktree is a pretty fun thing that people use. That is a landing page that you can put in your link in bio on your social media that will bring people to all the different places, all the different podcast directories that they can choose to listen to your podcast on. And if you do think it's in your budget to have a website, Squarespace has a few different options for email marketing built in, and so does Wix. And you can get started with that. So the main thing is just to familiarize yourself with email marketing, understand what it is.
Yeah.
Google
Email
about
marketing is super important, because as you grow and as you grow your social media, you don't really know who's watching your content or who's listening to your show. You're going to get numbers and you're going to get statistics about impressions and all that. But who's watching your content, that's a little tricky to find out directly. So that's why having an email list is so important, because, and I think you guys would agree with me that for you to give your email to somebody is because you really like that organization, company, business, or person.
So if somebody gives you their email, that you know they like you.
You know they like you, and that you know that they're going to be listening to your podcast. And you know, even if you have 10 people on your email list, 20 people, you know that those people will be following your progress and they are fans already. And you can send them emails talking to them directly. And when your show launches, then you can send a link that they can click on and go listen to your episode. I mean, how cool is that? We're so excited about our email list.
Oh, we're so excited. Every time we get a new email, it's so fun.
Well, yeah, it is so fun. And it's so fun to write for them directly and to watch who has opened our emails. And
watch who's opened them and everything else. And for that, we really like ConvertKit. But there are so many companies. We'll leave a ConvertKit link in this episode's description. But there's a lot of research that you have to do here. So it's just something, don't be overwhelmed, but make sure that it's on your checklist, that you at least on social media and things, come up with a strategy to start collecting some emails.
you're going to have to take the next one too.
Oh, what is the next one? Pick
your gear setup.
Pick your gear setup.
Pick your gear setup.
Basically, with your gear setup, you're just thinking about what your budget is. And on the cheap side, you can get away with $100 is all it takes to start a podcast, assuming that you already have a computer. You can also podcast for free if you already have a phone, and that's a great way to get your feet wet to make sure it's something you want to do. But there's some problems with that. And I actually have a freebie that I put together for a client that I'm going to attach to this episode's description as well. It's called Studio Steve's Podcasting Equipment Suggestions 2019. And I left out so much gear that you could get. But there's some really good helpful links in here. They take you directly to the Amazon link or whatever. So make sure that you grab that freebie from the download guide. And what I just did there, by the way, was a way to get your email. So that's an example of what you could do to collect emails from people, is build up a little freebie, little informational knowledge, little checklist, things like that.
Lead magnet.
Lead magnets is what they're called, right? Okay, so gear setup. Also, with this, basically, you're just going to need a microphone, an interface, and think about treating the sound of your room. And then you're going to have to pick what audio editing software you want to use. That's also called a DAW, or a digital audio workstation. And the good news here is there's a lot of free options. There's on PC or Mac, you can use Audacity. On Mac, there's GarageBand, comes with every Mac computer, which is really great. And our favorite, obviously my favorite, because I'm in love and have a romantic relationship, is Pro Tools. And also you'll find a playlist if you are interested in Pro Tools first on our YouTube channel that from start to finish will get you up and running in Pro Tools. Here is another area, especially when it comes to editing, you don't want to jinx or you don't want to take the quick route when it comes to editing. You want to make sure that you do some editing on each one of your episodes.
We don't want to hear the dog barking. We don't want to hear the ice cream truck.
And just to cut out some of your ums and when you stagger in your speech and to help yourself.
Annoying ums
and this is why one of the reasons that you will eventually want to get away from just using your phone to podcast if that's how you want to start, because that doesn't allow you to do advanced editing.
And maybe outsourcing too.
Yeah, and the other option you can consider is outsourcing your editing. And that is actually a service that we provide. We just started providing that. So we'll leave a link to that on our website where you can come look at our editing services. There's also other editing services out there. If that's in your budget, that will save you a lot of time. And with that, I think we can move on to our next point, which is create some practice recording. You just want to get familiar with your software, and then you want to determine if you have that time every week. This is where in your practice recordings, when you're getting, there's a lot of education that it takes to get really quick at editing your podcast, even just simple podcasts.
And also, unless you are somebody who comes from radio or somebody who comes from TV and are used to talking in front of the microphone, this practice and episodes are very good for you to get familiar and to feel comfortable talking in front of the microphone, because it's a whole different thing. It has taken me, I still struggle with certain things with my speech, but it is so important for you that you feel comfortable in your own skin and that you are enjoying recording your podcast, because people can't see you. They can only listen to your voice. And if you are nervous, if you are agitated, if it's forced, if it doesn't come out genuine, if it comes out rehearsed, then you may lose that connection with your listeners.
Yeah, it's also a wonderful way to find your podcast voice. It's a wonderful way to get confident. Just get in there and start goofing around, making practice recordings.
And don't we have an episode about finding your podcast
voice? We do, right here on your podcast directory. So check that out for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Now we're going to move on to recording your trailer and your first episodes.
Exciting!
Yeah!
Finally! After all the planning and thinking and writing and buying and using your credit card and signing up for things and
Googling
and Googling
listening to Pod
Sound School Talk and watching the Pod Sound School videos, you are finally ready to record your first episode.
Yes,
Yoo-hoo!
and a trailer for your podcast.
And a trailer. That's important.
Yes. So you want to create a catchy intro. This is an intro that you can use every time for your podcast, and create an outro while you're at it too. Here's where you could include some administrative stuff. You could just pre-record that very nicely, so it's very easy down the road when you're editing.
Yeah.
I like to build what I call an assets folder, and that's where you can gather some royalty-free music that you can use for your intro or at certain conversational points or segments that you're going to plan on doing. Put all that in a folder and get yourself organized.
Yeah, so Steven recently created a trailer and an intro, and he's been creating music for your Such a Catch podcast. If you haven't listened to that podcast, you should go listen so you can see him in action. And he just created a wonderful intro for that podcast. It was a very fun project, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was really fun. Yeah.
I'm in it.
Yeah.
And many people.
Many people are in it. It's a really cool intro. And actually, there's on our Patreon, if you become one of our patrons, you can see a behind-the-scenes video exactly how I created that.
Oh, yeah.
A bunch of other stuff, too. So come check out our Overachievers Club on Patreon.
Come support the Pod Sound School and see the behind-the-scenes of how we do
things. Veronica also did managing her Instagram for that same client, You're Such a Catch podcast. And you can see behind the scenes of how Veronica is in action on an
without
Instagram.
Makeup and no sleep. So
it's absolutely wonderful.
Don't get scared.
So once you get those, then you're going to want to export your trailer and your first episodes to MP3 files and create a folder for that, Final MP3s. And that's where you'll be putting all your final MP3 files. And when you're encoding those MP3 files, they'll give you a lot of different options. The option you would like to choose is 128 kilobits per second. That'll be very friendly, low file sizes, and all of the podcast hosting sites will accept that nicely. And that's about it with that. And the next one on the list, we're moving on to
number 8.
Choose a podcast host.
So our latest YouTube video is all about choosing your podcast host. And on that video, I take you through the list of our top 5 choices for podcast host.
And we kind of explain the difference between a podcast hosting site and a website. The things you want to have in mind with choosing a podcast host are attractive embed players, ease of use. Is there a simple dashboard or homepage that's easy for you to use? You want a podcast hosting site that just lets you upload that MP3 file, throw your artwork and an episode description up there, and then you're good to go. And so it makes it really simple. That's why having a hosting site is what we suggest, other than trying to host your podcast on your website. You can, Squarespace and Wix will allow you to host your podcast using your webpage, which is what we do, but we would much prefer going the other route. And it's because they make it so much more easy.
And
they
then
also
you get analytics too.
You get analytics. That's the big one. You want to make sure you're getting very comprehensive, detailed analytics about who's downloading your show. There's some very impressive analytics. Some of those are Buzzsprout, Podbean, our wonderful podcast hosts to start with. They have free options. And then our favorite is Simplecast. We like to use Simplecast with Squarespace. So definitely we'll leave the link for choosing a podcast host video. It's definitely worth checking. This is one of your big decisions you're going to make as a podcaster. And it's one that's kind of hard to get out of once you've made it, because migrating your podcast from one host to another, there's potential of losing your subscribers and sort of having to restart and things like that. Regardless, it's a giant headache. So take some time here and check your budget. Look at what you can afford as far as a podcast host. Podbean's a great one if you want to start off for free. And the next one is
upload your trailer to the host.
You'd want to upload your trailer to the host first before uploading your episodes. So after you've uploaded your trailer to your host, that's as simple as just putting the MP3 up there to your hosting site. Then you want to distribute your RSS feed to all the different directories. This is where having a trailer is really helpful, because it can take, like iTunes is the big one. It will take Apple Podcasts. It can take them up to 3 weeks to approve your show. So it's hard to tell people when your podcast is coming out if you're not sure when you're going to be available on all the directories, right? So this is why we like Simplecast. Buzzsprout's really cool for this too. And Podbean's pretty friendly with this too, as far as them helping you to get your RSS feed submitted to all the directories. They make it very simple. And then number 11, after all of that, is launch strategy.
What you want to do for your launch strategy is to pick a date. That is so important, because if you don't pick a date, then you're going to be dragging the whole thing, weeks and weeks and weeks. But when you pick a date and you share that date on your social media with your followers, with your family, with your friends, it's official. You will have a podcast by that date. That's why it's so important. And it also helps you plan your launch week by week. So what we recommend is 4 weeks, right? Before
4 weeks.
It can be longer than that.
It can be longer than that.
But, if you make it longer, then people may lose interest and forget all about your podcast. And it takes a lot of work to promote your show on social media every week so people can keep it in their minds that the launch is coming.
Yeah, and also we've noticed
I think
that
4 weeks would be...
Yeah, 4 weeks is good, 4 to 6. Because we've noticed anything more than that too, you start to get a little too over-prepared or procrastinate or think too much about your content. And we want to
You're
hurry.
going to freak out during the process, so that's normal too.
And we want to just hurry and get that content out there and start getting feedback on it so that then you can start making adjustments based off the feedback you get. Your content is likely going to change or it definitely will.
Progress over perfection.
Yes, progress over
Thank
perfection.
you, Marie Forleo.
Yes. So yeah, with the launch strategy, pick a date and then promote that date. Make an event out of that day and once that trailer's up, start asking your friends and family and the followers you've already gotten on your social media to go over and listen to the trailer that's on the podcast directories and start leaving reviews and subscribing or following on the podcast directories. Another really cool reason that you want to get that trailer up early and get that out to those podcast directories is it allows people to follow you. And that way, if they forget about you, they get the reminder in their podcast player that you've gone live. And then, with that, you'll have a great launch strategy. We also have an episode here on our podcast. It's a very recent episode, season 2, episode 27, that we call the Staunch Podcast Launch. And that has a ton of useful information in it, all about launching. So when you get to this step, then go ahead and listen to that episode and make sure that you've covered your bases there.
Yeah.
And that's it. If you follow these 11 steps, you're going to be ready to go.
If you have friends who are interested in having a podcast, if you have friends who are like getting ready to launch their podcast or are working towards planning their shows, share this episode with them. Leave a review and a rating for us on Apple Podcasts.
Yeah, with that, it's great. Come say hi to us at social media, and good luck launching and getting started with that podcast. If you have anything you're struggling with, we've got you covered. Come slide into our direct messages. And also, every Tuesday before the podcast comes out at 1 p.m, we do this live on Twitter and on YouTube. So subscribe to us on YouTube and you can watch us flub up and make our mistakes, and you can see my face turn red, and you can see
learn English with me.
Yes, and so come over there for sure.
I will teach you English.
Yeah, and
El inglés.
With that,
Hasta luego.
Until we meet again, everyone, happy casting. Thanks for tuning in, and good luck with your podcasts.
Feliz casting, podcasteros.
At the pod show.